Released in 1978, John Carpenter's Halloween was a critical and financial success, becoming one of the most successful independent films in cinematic history. Like with any successful horror film, sequels followed, with quality varying. Some were excellent and stand out as some of the best in their genre, while others are entertaining to a point, but heavily flawed. Today I'm discussing one of the latter, and it is the film that introduced me to the series. Released in 1995, Halloween: The Curse of Michael Myers is the sixth film in the series, and the fifth to focus on the character of Michael Myers. Picking up 5 years after the previous film, Michael and his niece Jamie are missing and presumed dead, and Halloween has been banned in Haddonfield since that fateful night. Teenagers are attempting to undo the ban, protesting in costume. Members of the Strode family now live in the old Myers house, and the youngest member, Danny, is hearing voices telling him to kill. Tommy Doyle, the boy Laurie babysat in the original film, is obsessed with Myers and lives across the street from his house, waiting for the infamous killer to return. Dr. Loomis has retired from medicine, but he maintains a quiet vigilance for his former patient. It is with these pieces in play that Michael returns for one more night of terror, one that promises to reveal the secret behind his invincible madness. Although longtime Halloween fan Daniel Farrands had a script for a sixth film written in 1990, a series of legal battles delayed production for several years. Eventually, Dimension Films bought the series rights and production moved forward. By 94, several screenplays by several writers had been considered and rejected, and Farrands was still tweaking his own. In total, he went through 11 drafts. His original version was far moodier and psychological. After reading it, one of the Dimension execs could not fall asleep. Fred Walton, director of When a Stranger Calls and April Fool's Day, was originally set to direct, but had to drop out. Jeff Burr was also considered, but the job eventually went to Joe Chappelle. Filming commenced in Salt Lake City, Utah in October 94, making it one of the few films in the series to be shot during the Halloween season. As production moved on, Chappelle and the producers butted heads constantly, which impacted production well into the editing stage and hurt on-set morale. After production wrapped in early 95, the film was test screened. Actress Marianne Hagen said it consisted primarily of 14-year-old boys. The audience's main point of contention was the ending, especially the curse of Thorn being passed on to Donald Pleasence's character. The studio panicked and rushed the film back into production, re-editing the first two acts and filming a new ending. This was complicated by Donald Pleasence's death in February, forcing the studio to write the ending around existing footage. The changes result in a gorier film, but leave glaring plot inconsistencies. The film debuted on September 29, 1995 to negative reviews, critics labeling it as tired and run-of-the-mill. Despite this, it made $15 million on a $5 million budget. Although it wasn't the last film in the series, it was the last one to center around Michael and the Man in Black. For years after the theatrical release, copies of the original cut circulated in the horror community. The footage was of poor quality, but it gave Halloween fans insight into what was originally intended. I remember seeing uploads of the footage on YouTube in 2008, but it vanished once the site started its strict copyright policy. Fans of the cut clamored for an official release, and in 2014 their wish was granted, as it was part of the complete collection box set. The following year it received a standalone release. In preparation for this review, I watched the producer's cut in its entirety for the first time. While not much better than the theatrical cut, it is at least edited together in a more coherent manner, even if the kills are less graphic. One of my main issues with the producer's cut is a plot element revealed in the third act, one people have ranted about for years. Michael Myers impregnating his niece. Yes, that indeed happens. Michael Myers, the Shape, impregnates the niece he's been trying to kill for 2 films. To borrow a phrase from the People's Champion, what in the blue hell? Were the writers high when they wrote this? Or were they just trying to push the fans' tolerance with this idiocy? While speculation on my part, I believe that this plot element comes straight from the director. From what I've gathered, Chappelle was not a fan of the series and only took the job to get a 3-picture deal with the studio. Writing in a plot element like this isn't much of a stretch, and it wouldn't be the first time something like this happened. Exorcist 2. Another major issue present in the producer's cut is that Michael is controlled by the Thorn cult. For me, that pushes things too far. Michael is supposed to be a force of nature, comparable to a storm or wildfire. Having the cult control him reduces him to a glorified heavy henchman, the type of being you'd see in a Bond film. At least the theatrical cut rectifies this and has Michael remain semi-independent and massacre most of the cult. The only silver lining the producer's cut has is that Michael regains his independence at the end, after Tommy uses stone magic. Speaking of which, said magic is another issue, although with me it's only minor. Given his research, it makes sense that Tommy would come across a pagan ritual to counteract Thorn's curse, but other than his bloodletting, it comes across as silly. The theatrical cut version may be simpler, with Tommy simply injecting Michael with a strange liquid before beating the tar out of him, but it comes across better on film. While not as large an issue, the theatrical cut edits also create a plot inconsistency when it comes to the cult. While the revelation that Wynn and his minions were performing experiments on patients would be an interesting twist in and of itself, depending on how the film around it was constructed, retained elements earlier on still point in the cult direction. This begs the question of why the cultist-leaning scenes that were very blatant, such as the baby being marked with the Thorn rune, weren't cut or refilmed. Time and money are my two assumptions. While not a large issue for me, something I noticed in the recent viewing is that Danny's subplot is left unresolved. It had promise, but the theatrical cut drops it out of nowhere by the third act, and the producer's cut never offers a resolution. According to IMDb, in earlier versions of the script, Danny actually gave into the Thorn voices and stabbed his mother, the scene taking place in the bus terminal bathroom from the first act. The studio felt this was too dark and it was rewritten, an action that doesn't surprise me. The final script had Wynn escaping from the hospital with a kidnapped Danny in tow, setting up a potential seventh film. This ending was most likely changed by Chappelle on set. While we'll never truly know how either version would have played out in practice, it is interesting to muse on. Paul Rudd played Tommy Doyle. This was one of Rudd's early films, and while he does his best, his performance is bland and uninteresting, which is sad. A Myers-obsessed Tommy Doyle had potential. Marianne Hagen played Kara Strode, and this was her film debut. While her performance is decent, outside of a few motherly moments, her character isn't as interesting as past series heroines. Donald Pleasence once again played Dr. Sam Loomis in what was sadly his final role. While easily his weakest performance as the psychiatrist, Pleasence is still 100% committed to the character, commanding every scene and delivering his trademark pure evil speeches with the same conviction. Pleasence's poor health is evident in his voice, as it's taken on a gravelly quality since '89, but I feel it fits where Loomis is at this point. A line in the producer's cut even alludes to him suffering a stroke, most likely during 5's ending. According to IMDb, the director deleted most of his scenes because he found him, quote-unquote, boring. In the words of Dr. Evil, right. Part of this deletion includes a slightly different opening narration, which I personally prefer to the one Rudd recorded for the theatrical cut. It sets the mood better for me. Mitchell Ryan of Lethal Weapon fame played Dr. Wynn. A minor character in the original film, his role was expanded on here, making Wynn one of Dr. Loomis's friends and, in an interesting bit of retconning, the Man in Black. This retcon makes Wynn's line in the original film about Myers driving humorous, as it implies he's the one who taught him. After Pleasence, Ryan gives the best performance in the film, ranging from a sympathetic friend to dark cultist, although the theatrical cut edits do change it drastically. J.C. Brady replaced Daniel Harris in the role of Jamie Lloyd. A glorified cameo, Brady is just there. Harris was originally set to reprise her role, but was recast when the producers didn't want to pay her asking fee. It's hard to say if this was for the better, as Jamie is just a glorified red shirt in this entry, no matter which cut you examine. Halloween 6 is a massively flawed film, and with its production history, it was doomed to fail. Its selling point is its largest issue. Explaining the origin of Michael Myers takes away the character's mystique, although I will give them credit for tying it into the holiday's pagan roots. As the film that introduced me to the series, I still do hold an affection towards it, and can watch both cuts as time wasters, but I wouldn't call either version good. Mere wasted potential.